The average savings account in America is paying somewhere between 0.01% and 0.5% interest. Meanwhile, inflation has been running between 3% and 8% annually for the past several years. Do that math, and what you'll find is that keeping money in a savings account isn't saving anything. It's a slow bleed. And the people who figured this out a long time ago? They stopped doing it entirely. This isn't some fringe theory. Walk into any serious wealth management conversation and you'll find that high net worth individuals, the people with real generational money, treat savings accounts the way most of us treat a coat pocket. Maybe a little loose change, nothing more. And that distinction, that one shift in how they think about idle cash, is one of the clearest dividing lines between people who build wealth and people who work their whole lives and wonder why the numbers never quite add up. Let me explain what's actually happening. When you deposit money into a savings account, the bank takes that money, lends it out at 6%, 8%, 10%, sometimes more. Mortgage rates, auto loans, credit cards, and then turns around and hands you back a fraction of a percent. They're using your money to make money. You're the product, and the safety framing around savings accounts is largely psychological engineering. It was designed to keep your cash parked somewhere the bank can access it. The FDIC insurance, the familiar interface, the word savings itself, all of it creates a feeling of security that masks a fundamentally bad financial arrangement for the depositor. Rich people understand this not because they're smarter, but because at a certain level of wealth, the cost of inaction becomes visible. When you have $2 million sitting in a savings account earning 0.4%, you're watching $70,000 or $80,000 in potential returns evaporate every year. That becomes impossible to ignore. For Xiao, someone with $20,000, the same math applies. It's just smaller. The principle is identical. So where does the money actually go? One of the first moves wealthy individuals make is shifting cash reserves into treasury bills or high-yield money market funds. These aren't exotic instruments. They're as liquid as a savings account in most cases, meaning you can get your money out when you need it. But they've been yielding anywhere from 4% to 5.5% in recent years. That's not life-changing on its own, but it's the baseline. It's the floor they operate from instead of starting at near zero. Beyond that, serious money moves into brokerage accounts. And this surprises a lot of people. Wealthy individuals often hold what most of us would consider emergency fund money inside a brokerage, invested in short-duration bond funds or dividend-paying assets. The reason is compounding. Even modest conservative returns inside a brokerage account, let's say 5% to 7% annually, will double money roughly every 10 to 14 years. A savings account at 0.4% takes over 175 years to do the same. That's not hyperbole, that's arithmetic. Then there's the asset class that's been the backbone of generational wealth for centuries. Real property, land, real estate. The wealthy don't keep $500,000 in cash. They keep it in something that cash can't erode. Real assets have historically outpaced inflation because they are inflation. Their value rises as the purchasing power of the dollar falls. When prices go up, what you own in physical form goes up with it. Cash sitting in a savings account goes the opposite direction in real terms, quietly, every single year. Here's something most people have never heard of. And I think it's one of the most underrated wealth preservation tools in existence. Properly structured whole life insurance. I know what you're thinking. Bear with me. This isn't your standard term life policy. Whole life policies, when designed correctly, build what's called cash value. Money that grows tax-deferred, can be borrowed against at favorable terms, and is protected from creditors in many states. Wealthy families have used these structures for generations. Banks themselves hold billions in these policies. It's called BOLI, bank-owned life insurance. And if banks are doing it, that alone should make you curious about why. Another mechanism the wealthy use that most people never consider. They become the lender. Private notes, private lending, seller financing on real estate. Instead of putting money in a savings account where the bank lends it out at 8%, they lend it out themselves at 8%. They collect the interest. It's not passive in the way a savings account is passive. It requires some involvement. But the returns are dramatically different. And once you start thinking about money this way, as a tool to be deployed rather than a reserve to be hoarded, everything shifts. Now, I want to be honest with you about something. There's a real psychological pull toward the savings account. I've felt it. When things are uncertain, economically, personally, politically, cash feels safe. It feels controllable. And that feeling isn't irrational. Liquidity matters. Having accessible money matters. I'm not suggesting you put everything into illiquid assets and cross your fingers. What I'm suggesting is that the binary choice most people operate with, savings account or nothing, is a false choice that was handed to them by the very institutions that profit from it. The wealthy don't see that binary. They see a spectrum. Some cash in a money market, some in short-duration bonds, some in real assets, some in equity, some in private arrangements. The weighting changes based on age, goals, and risk tolerance, but the common thread is that idle money is treated as a problem to solve, not a virtue to celebrate. And here's the part that most financial conversations skip over entirely: the compounding gap. If you take $25,000 and put it in a savings account for 30 years at 0.4%, you end up with roughly $28,000. If you put that same $25,000 into a diversified approach averaging 6% annually over those 30 years, you're looking at over $143,000. Same starting point, same 30 years. The difference is $115,000, and it came entirely from the decision of where to park the money. That's not theoretical. That's what the math produces. Every time. The people who build real financial independence aren't necessarily earning dramatically more than you. In many cases, they're just refusing to let their money sit still. They learned, either from family, from advisors, or from painful experience, that the savings account is a convenience, not a strategy, and once you see it that way, you can't unsee it. Here's where to start. Not with some complicated investment scheme or a product someone's trying to sell you. Start by simply asking, is this money working, or is it waiting? For your emergency fund, yes, keep 3 to 6 months of expenses somewhere accessible. That's not negotiable. But everything beyond that threshold deserves a better assignment than 0.4%. Open a brokerage account if you don't have one. Look at treasury bills. Look at I-bonds. Look at what a money market fund is actually yielding right now compared to your savings account. The information is out there. The tools are available to anyone with an internet connection. The only thing that was ever really hidden was the mindset, the understanding that money, like any other resource, atrophies when it sits unused. The wealthy figured that out early. Now you have